Ladies and gentlemen, let us move to the first panel discussion on the topic of creating a culture of integrity and trust. This discussion will revolve around the idea of maximizing effectiveness on anti-corruption and corporate liability provision. Please join me in inviting our lineup of panelists. The first one, yang berbahagia, Datuk Seri Nur Azlan Muhammad Razali, MACC Deputy Chief Commissioner. Second panel, yang berusia Encik Muhammad Muazzam Mohamad, AIBIM President and Group Chief Executive Officer Bank Islam. Third panel, yang berbahagia, Datuk Wan Muhammad Fazmi, Wan Osman Fazilah, Independent Non-Executive Chairman, Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation Malaysia Berhad. And this session will be moderated by yang berbahagia Dr. Kasim Nur Muhammad, CEO ELMU Group. Gentlemen, please welcome. And yang berbahagia Dr. K, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to our extremely distinguished invited guests for this first panel discussion. Just a bit of an introduction. First of all, to the first panelist, Datuk Sri Nur Azlan bin Muhammad Razali, who is the Deputy Chief Commissioner of Prevention, Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission. What I must say is, what a distinguished career you have, Datuk Sri. I've known you for quite some time, and I know that, frankly speaking, Datuk Sri Nur Azlan is a no-nonsense person. So you first joined the Anti-Corruption Commission in 1989 within the Investigation Division, specializing in financial, international, and money laundering, and you held several posts since then, including as Selangor MACC Director, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Academy Director, where I had the privilege to first get to know you, Chief of Staff at the Executive Office of the Chief Commissioner, Head of Integrity of the Federal FELDA, and Johor MACC Director. And you are a pioneering member of the National Coordinating Committee to Counter Money Laundering, and develop national strategies to combat money laundering, including the enactment of Anti-Money Laundering Act 2001, and now the Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act 2001, as well as Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act 2002. And you, as I said earlier, is currently the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Deputy Chief Commissioner Prevention. Welcome to this forum. Secondly, but very importantly, is Tuan Muhammad Muazzam bin Muhammad, President Association of the Islamic Banking and Financial Institution of Malaysia. And as everyone knows, he's the Group Chief Executive Officer of Bank Islam. And he joined Bank Islam in 2015. As the Chief Financial Officer before being appointed to your current position in 2018. You're formerly a partner with KPMG in Malaysia and Executive Director with KPMG Management Consulting. A Chartered Accountant with the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, a Council Member of the Malaysian Institute of Certified Public Accountants. The list goes on. And you currently serve as the President of the AIBIM, and you have over 25 years of experience in the field of finance, consulting, and audit. Although, if I look at you, you don't look as if you have been in 25 years. You know, you look so young. Finally, but not last but not least, Dato' Wan Muhammad Fazmi bin Cik Wan Osman Fadilah, if I'm not wrong in the way I pronounce this. Independent Non-Executive Chairman, Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, Malaysia Berhad. And Dato' Wan Fazmi has extensive experience in domestic as well as international banking. During your 22 years career in Malaysian Banking Berhad, You held various senior management positions, including chief executive and country heads for the bank operations in London, New York, and Hong Kong. And from a previous conversation with you, you were in the UK for about 7 years. I'm sad that I missed you when I was there. In addition, you are Director of Global Financial Banking Strategic Business Group at RHB from July 2020 to June 2021, before assuming the position as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Bank Pertanian, Malaysia Berhad, which is Agro Bank from July 2011 till August 2017. And you're a chartered banker and a fellow of the Institute of Corporate Directors Malaysia. And you have received many accolades in your career, including Outstanding CEO of 2017 from Association Development Financial Institution in Asia Pacific in Macau, China, and CEO of the Year for Global Islamic Finance Award in Jakarta in 2016. And presently, you are the Independent Non-Executive Director of Hub Seng Consolidated Berhad, Zurich General Takaful Malaysia Berhad, Independent Non-Executive Chairman of Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, Malaysia Berhad. What a privilege we have here to be in the presence of such distinguished personalities. Let me start by taking forward a very interesting keynote speech delivered by the Honorable Datuk Sri Ahmad Kusairi bin Yahya, the Deputy Chief Commissioner of MACC, on behalf of representing the Chief Commissioner, Datuk Sri, Tan Sri Datuk Sri Azam Baki, where a number of pertinent points and suggestions were raised on how the financial sector has a very important part to play in the eradication of corrupt practices, as well as in the inculcation of integrity. And may we start with a general question before moving on to specifics. I think this is a general question to all the panelists. You can go to town with it, or you can just give a summary. That's not a problem at all. The question is, where do you think we are as responsible organizations in the fight against corruption and the misuse of banking structures by unscrupulous actors? Is it a winnable war? May I start with Datuk Sri or Datuk Tuan Muazzam?
Okay, boleh. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. Thank you, everybody. I mean, so the question that was posed was, is it a war? If it is a war, then it is a war that we must win. And the reason being is that I think we heard, and I echo what was mentioned by DG earlier, is that at the end of the day, all of us, we are in this room, we are the leaders of Islamic financial institutions for our respective institutions. And our business is built upon the principles of trust. So that's why the end of the day is so important. And the other reason is that because at the end of the day, we are at the forefront. Yeah, because it was mentioned that, you know, when we talk about fight against issues of corruption, integrity and all that, we are at the forefront because we, chances are people who wants to commit acts of corruption, money laundering and all that may need to use the channels to go through the financial systems, and chances are it's going to be facilitated by the banks at the end of the day. So this is where we need to ensure that we have the right policies in place, right? But more importantly is that we need to have the right essence in place, the right principles. Now, fortunately, for all of us, I think there's many guidance that are available to us. I mean, obviously, we spoke about the fact that we are embracing value-based intermediation, upholding the Maqasid Sharia. So I think the best conduct is required in the way how we do our business. But in terms of codifying it, in terms of giving clarity to it, I mean, for our financial services professionals, we've got our code of ethics that are available to us for us to observe. Each of our institution need to translate this into our code of conduct and becoming our shared values, right? Those are the things that should shape our culture to uphold integrity at the end of the day. And the other part is that we also are blessed with the fact that, you know, the government has come up with this OECP, so many GLCs are supposed to implement it. Many of the banks that are also part of the GLCs have to implement it. There's also many institutions now that are doing it voluntarily, especially with the introduction of the, corporate liability provisions now. So this enables institutions to put it into their policies, their principles, have it a lot more structured in terms of how they put in place a system that can help to detect and prevent, hopefully, corruption. And also, with the advance of technology, now there's a lot more ability from the perspective of monitoring transactions, whether by the customers or by own employees of the organization. There's always that audits, reviews, assessment in terms of effectiveness of the system. So in terms of the reasons for it, yes, there's clear reason for it. In terms of the enabling infrastructure systems that are required to be put in place, it is there. And obviously, we have this kind of forum where among the members we can share good practices of how each and every one of us can put in place the right structure, the right control to ensure that at the end of the day we all uphold integrity, because going back to the point is that upholding customers' trust is important. All of us need to excel in this, because if any one of us do not do a good job at upholding integrity, the entire industry will be affected. So it is, again, I go back to my point, that if it is a war, then definitely it's a war that we must win. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies to the panelists, because actually that question was actually for you, just for you alone. But can I follow up with one more question there? You see, integrity seems to be the buzzword at the moment. You know, everywhere we're talking about integrity. In fact, the speeches that we heard just now, everything is about integrity and trust. But how do we gauge integrity? What matrix should we apply in engaging integrity? I do know that there is the quote about integrity is doing the right thing when no one is around. You know, as for instance, just like late at night, you're driving and there's a traffic light and it's red. Okay, whether you move straight or you just wait, you know, that actually talks a lot about your integrity. So how do we actually gauge integrity?
I would like to pose that question to you, to be honest, Dr. Kasim, because this is a question that really, we keep asking ourselves that question. Our board asks us that kind of question. Our regulators ask us that question. How do you know that, you know, in terms of integrity is embedded? How do you know that you've got the right culture? How do you know that, you know, you've done all these statements, all these aspirations, all these objectives, you put in place controls, risk assessment, corruption, risk management, and all that. How do you know that it has gone in, it's sunk in everybody? And how do you know that we have reflected it? Because it's so inherent. It's something that you do when no one is watching. So how do you know that, you know, only we know, right? And I think one of the things that people are saying, that doing the right things when no one is watching, is also being truthful to our own self. I think individually, we would know. Now, obviously, in terms of, for me, being a CEO, I mean, I've got great responsibility and accountability of what's happening, right? And, you know, I mean, Datuk Sri would be able to talk about all the laws that make sure that, you know, the board and the CEOs especially are responsible and accountable for the action of the employees. I ask that kind of questions all the time. But I think at the end of the day, and expanding on that, of course, our wish and our objective is that for everybody to be able to act with integrity, doing the right thing all the time. But I think we also need to be able to demystify it a bit by giving the kind of right tools for our people to know what is the right thing to do and how to act in the moment when they are faced with difficult situations for them to do the right thing, even when no one is watching, right? So obviously we heard about tone from the top, walking the talk. I think it's so important for us to ensure that it's embedded within the organization, not only the statement to say that zero tolerance for corruption, integrity is of most importance, but I think our people need to be able to see that in action. They need to see that when we as leaders in this room, in this organization, when we are faced with that difficult situation, how do we act? So it's not so much about when you talk about the tone from the top of what do we advocate to our employees, that's good as a first step. But they will be watching that when you actually perform your role, when you are faced with difficult decisions that you need to make in a meeting, in the discussions, in dealing with disciplinary matters, what do you do? I think that's the most important thing. But the other part, I think, coming back to you said that how do you measure, I guess, we cannot hide behind the fact that it's inherent, therefore we say that, I think our people are good, integrity is good. We still need to look at some kind of metrics that may give indication that integrity is upheld in the organizations. So among us just sharing what we look at, for example, in terms of issues that came out from our audit findings. For example, we look at complaints about customers' complaints about our behaviors or employees' behaviors. We look from the perspective of the compliance review that I'll do, because we have all this guidance on fair practices for staff and all that. We also supplement with, because we have various policies on anti-bribery, gifts policy, conflict of interest and all that, compliance review towards complying to those kind of policies. Of course, that is also another metric that we use to quote-unquote measure integrity. So, but at the end of the day, I hope that there could also be other insights in terms of how can we best measure integrity. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this question actually brings a lot of memories to me personally. When I was in law with the law enforcement agencies way back, many centuries ago, as you can see from my age, okay? When I was evaluated on integrity, my assessor said my integrity level is very high, at 97.5 or something like that. So my question to him, what happened to the 2.5? Because if you have integrity at 100%, then you have integrity. But there's a 2.5% vacuum there. That means I don't have integrity. It's either 100% or no integrity at all. Which I still remember then, those days, when they were doing the SKT in Laporan Prestasi, those days. You know, and that's why I think we need to come up with a proper medium of measurement in terms of integrity. So, and to me, I think integrity is either you have integrity or you don't. You know, and because integrity got to be 100%. But the medium of measuring integrity needs to be enhanced further. My next question is specifically for Datuk Sri Nur Azlan. How do you think, Datuk Sri, can both the banking industry and law enforcement agency further enhance already existing cooperations that is now in place?
First of all, thank you to AIBIM for inviting us over here. Way back in 30 years ago, I think past 30, I attended the Bank Negara interview when came back and applied for a job. And then later on, I attended MACCs. Those were BPR at that time, anti-corruption agencies. But then I got a job offer first from the BPR MACC now. A week after I joined the Kursus Asas, the basic training, then came the Bank Negara offer. I put me in dilemma there, whether, because I'm an accountant, whether I want to pursue a financial institutions career, or this is a totally new to me, it's law enforcement. So somehow, I do not know why, I'll stick with MACCs. So
I think it's a loss to the banking industry.
I don't think so. Coming to your questions, I think we have a lot of kind of cooperations, either a structured one or people-to-people relations between law enforcement and also financial institutions. You also heard that the latest one that we come up with, the national scams, cooperations between law enforcement and financial institutions. Having said that, there are a few things, I think, what we need is not another mechanisms or another jawatan kuasa, because Malaysia is so famous about that, forming jawatan kuasa after another. But I think to enhance what we already have. From my perspective, the law enforcement, we look at the relationships and the cooperations between financial institutions and law enforcement. There are two things that we truly required: speed and availability. Speed in fulfilling our requests through the orders and through the notices that we have sent. We understand the limitations, and we appreciate the demarcations pertaining to your legislations, the financial legislations, banking secrecies, and also the criminal legislations. But then speed is the utmost importance to law enforcement, because there are cases when I was a state director, or even when prior to this job, I was a senior investigation director, that we had to wait more than 2 weeks just to get information of the official requests and notices that we sent to some of the financial institutions. I'm not saying all, but there are some. So these are the areas that I think perhaps the AIBIM or the financial institutions would consider. That's one thing. Another thing is that the availability of people to come for the recording of statements. Most tends to have one dedicated officers to attend to all the recording of statements. So this guy is very, very, very popular in court. Everybody knows him. He will talk about all the cases. But then sometimes the understanding of the trend of the offenses is not there. You didn't give any other additional values to the investigation, because the values that you give are all stated as what in the formal documents. This is two areas. So that what I think that we need, I wrote it down because I'm afraid I will forget about it. We need to have a structured training. One is by banking industries to LEAs, to the law enforcement. You have to teach us about the trends of the account owners, and perhaps you do demography of offenses. Demography of behavioral studies is part of the what you call investigations techniques that are being applied in foreign jurisdictions, but not in Malaysia yet. Another is the new threats. What we do with the e-money issuance business. You're not surprised to see some of the people's touch and go balance way you know, I think they can use that for a tool for lifetimes. And then the modus operandi, the structurings operandi. And then another thing is that from the LEAs to the financial institutions, I think we law enforcement agencies need also to train the financial institutions on the evidentiary requirements and the modus operandi of what we have gathered. And then in terms of integrity, I think the trainings, we should expand it beyond the criminal investigations. For MACC, we also conduct ethics training. Then you also have IIM trainings, you know. So some of these can be employed in our relationships or cooperations or call, right? Another one thing that I think that we need is open up our own our data to allow sharing. We are sorry to say, but we are so kedekut in sharing data. Everybody hide behind the, oh, I can't do it, this is my professional ethic, or I can't do it, the law doesn't allow me to do so. But then this is where we lose out. There is a lot of data values in STR and CTRs, and a lot of data values in MECC's database. So if we merge this data and then we mine it together, then we could come up with a more improved and accuracy data analysis. The last one, I think that we should think seriously about it and then open it up, and then let's see how it takes us in the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing. Thank you.
I think those are some very important points and issues that you brought up. Intelligence, no matter financial intelligence or any intelligence, nowadays we can't work in silos, like you said before, and see what happened when the various stakeholders work in silos, and see what happened like the 9/11, because every agency was not sharing. They were so guarded with the intelligence they have, they couldn't get a total mosaic of what's happening around them. So maybe I think in terms of financial crime, we should adopt that collaborative mentality rather than silo mentality, because but there will be other issues, like you said, you know, like the issue of ethics, the issue of different principles upheld by different institutions, which has been very traditional. Now we got to break that barrier. I guess, Dato' Sri, you have actually answered the second question I wanted to ask you was, yeah, because in terms of awareness and knowledge among financial industry players and stakeholders, the question I was going to ask you about what are the important elements should be in place to further professionalize individual employees in the banking industry. You some sort of answered that there, but do you think there's anything else you should add in terms of further professionalizing individual employees in the banking industry to assist the other stakeholders?
You shouldn't give me the mic. I can't stop talking.
I know that.
But I guess we should end it earlier because everybody got a lover's lunch today, and they have to prepare for the dinners. Yeah. Today's Valentine's.
Oh, okay. Right.
Right. I think the thing that we're going to speak are the thing that being spoken so many times. You have to have, but you have to identify your risk areas in terms of organizations, and you have to accurately doing that. Example, between credit risk department and loan application department, which one are much more riskier? Between recommendation and approval, which can help the more powers, and then nature of business, whether you are business loans or development loans or commercial loans, and your likely type of offenses that happen in the financial institutions, whether it is corruptions, or embezzlements, or COI, conflict of interest. That depends. You need to do risk assessments. The keywords are correctly, accurately identifying it. And then you have to have I would say, in terms of institutionalizing your integrities, you have to have a clear and strong science of policies that target your internal employees and also target your external business partners, like your suppliers. If you have a no-give policy, then put it your banners in the banks, or no bribe policies. You have to tell it. That will send us a very strong message pertaining to your integrities regime. I just like to highlight certain things from our data. See, I'm sharing. From 2020 until 2022, Dr. Magosari talking about corruptions in the private sectors. Now, this is specifically for the financial institutions. We received 78 allegations or report lodged against people in the financial institutions. The numbers are small, but one misstep by a particular financial institutions in one NDB case has resulted to that. So we received 78 allegation reports. And then we opened up 35 investigation papers. We arrest 19 people. We charge so far 6 people. So major type of offenses, this is based on our analysis, asking and receiving bribes. So these are the areas where financial institutions are at most risk. Your offenses that most of the financial institution people committed are asking and receiving bribes. The numbers is compared to the total populations of your industries, I would say is very small. That in terms of risk, it's very low risk. But the thing is, you shouldn't have it, because you have a major risk, reputational risk. If something happened to your employees, it was in the star paper, something like that say, for example, a bank from this particular bank then was charged, then your reputational risks are greater than the corrupt risk. Things that I would suggest that in terms of selections of your employees, I think you should also apply the fit and proper test, not only to the BOD, but then somehow you have to apply it, especially for your new selection and also for your posting of officers to the risky areas. One thing from MACC, what we could offer to do and assist you, if you need a particular vettings on the names of officers for sensitive posts, for example, you could write to us, and then we'll do the vetting, checking with our database on allegations of corruptions. Perhaps there may not be an investigation conducted, but his name or her name appears somewhere there. So we leave it to you to decide. But then you have beforehand the information. So with that kind of information, you can make a well-informed decisions. So that's from me.
Well, there you are. There goes one of the results of this forum. There's going to be you can actually elicit the cooperation of MACC when it comes to vetting. Now, I'm not leaving you out, Dato' Wan, you know. I'm leaving the best for the last, okay? My question to you, Dato', as a corporate leader with vast experience in the banking and financial sector, can you share a bit of your experience with regards to the challenges that this sector might face, where integrity and governance is concerned?
Thank you, Doctor. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this forum. It's a pleasure, and I've heard a lot in the last half an hour. I think most of the questions they have actually, rather the answers have been actually quite apt in terms of where you're asking. But let me add on to this. I think integrity should be a way of life. That is one thing I think somehow I noticed. I mean, I'm in the banking industry for 30 years. When we started those days, we, of course, integrity was everything. Integrity means credibility, your reputation, and you are molded to where you are today because your reputation, without your reputation, you have nothing. Because don't forget, in the banking industry, you are the trust. You are holding a position of trust because you've got depositors' funds. So I always remember that. Bukan duit kita, duit rakyat sebenarnya. So, but of course, things have evolved. You know, banks have now evolved into many, many things. Investment banks, disintermediation. That is fine, but don't forget, the core to all this is basically your reputation. So somewhere along the way, I think, and I see this mainly in the youngsters now. I'm sorry to say, I'm quite frank about this sort of things. I think the earlier generation of people, that's all we have, because this was pre-internet generation. They call it the analog generation. But I notice now with lifestyle, people can view into your inner side. You know, there's this flash lifestyle. So people want to ape that. They want to get things quick. So when you do things quickly, then you tend to take shortcut. And somehow that fits itself into the integrity of the person. Now, of course, in the financial industry, that's a no-go area. You just can't. There's a dichotomy, or there's an inconsistency between bankers are very boring people. Betul? That's who we are, right? But these days, I notice it's become a very flash. But there's not much of a correlation. So if I can put it in sum up my observation, we need to come back to where we were before somehow. I realize that you cannot come back to where you were 30 years ago. I mean, the past is the past. But I think along the way, banks have also morphed into something more akin to lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we must remember our core value that we are basically essentially custodians and trustees for public funds. So as long as we remember that and incorporate integrity into that, how we conduct ourselves on a day-to-day basis, I think we should be fine. So I think those are some of my earlier observations. Regarding how do we do this? I think the youngsters, if education is a key part, so if somehow, I think it was mentioned earlier on this morning that education, I think where your institution comes in, how can we bring about this kind of values at an early stage? I mean, if you bring it at the university level, my view is it's a little bit too late. How can we embed responsibility of being responsible financially, being somewhat suspicious of things, how do we bring that at an early stage in a person's life cycle? Then so that when the person becomes an adult, the person is responsible. I mean, you obviously notice nowadays there's a lot of bankruptcies on the rise. Something must have happened to bring about that kind of behavior. So in a nutshell, I feel that basically we need to come back home to certain basic issues of how we live our lifestyle. And I think the banks and the financial institutions have a key role to play to facilitate organize that kind of behavior, so that going to the future for Malaysia with the younger generation, we build the right type of culture with our population. That's all.
Well, that's very interesting, because now I feel like a dinosaur. Because when I was doing banking, when I was young, and my dad, my late dad was there, banking was a totally different ball game. Nowadays, I think, like you said, the idea of instant gratification that we're seeking, that creates this roller coaster ride that cut corners, I would love to go back to the 60s, when the first bank that I went to was a bank called Chung Kiao Bank, where my saving was in a ceramic piggy bank, but I think nowadays, when we talk about the youngsters, I don't know what the age of a youngster is now, because if I calculate it, maybe anyone who is 10 years younger than me is a youngster, hopefully. But yeah, I think there are some very good points that you brought up, Dato'. And also, what are the changes in approach that the banking sector needs to have in place to address misuse of banking sectors by unscrupulous actors? Is there anything you want to add on that?
I think take on Dato' Sri's point about vetting. I think certainly for me that has been the basis of how if you onboard somebody, whether it's an employee or to join the board, I think you got to put a lot of emphasis in terms of checking the person out. I think we are limited in terms of the tools because data is still kind of in silo.
Yeah.
If we can converge the data, and I know MACC does this, for example, in GLCs, I think we are supposed to write to MACC and get the vetting. It'd be good, Dato', if we can actually, somehow, I wish list lah, if we can get some granularity in terms of the data. All we get is just a one-pager saying that the person is okay. But the qualitative part, I think, is something that, not only that, it will help us also in evaluating, when we want to evaluate future candidates, we know what are the characters, that, the kind of things that MAC is looking for. I think there's a lot of data and a lot of, the way the thought process of agencies, which can add a lot of value. There's no doubt Bank Negara, through the fit and proper assessment, has made huge gains. So I think as far as the private sector banks are concerned, I think it's all in place. But if you look at the GLC institutions, forgive me, I mean some of the financial institutions under the ambit of GLC, it's a little bit patchy, the way they do the vetting. This is my honest opinion. I mean, let's be frank about it. So I think the private sector institutions have gone miles ahead. But where the problem is, I mean, let's look at it. Where are the major issues now with procurement? Where is it happening? It's not happening with the private sector. It's mainly happening with the GLCs. So part of it is actually the onboarding of people. And like it or not, when we have these nominations coming in from the top, it should be a bottom-up process, my honest opinion. So even if it comes from the top, the process must be rigorous. There can be no double standards. Then, as they say, the fish rots from the head. Yeah. So if you get the right leader doing the right thing when people are not looking, especially, it will flow down to the way the employees behave. Yeah. If the up there is not behaving well, what will happen down there? It's amplified. It's not only 1-to-1. The ratio is probably 1-to-3, the bad behavior. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the issues that keeps cropping up is, the last thing you want is the banking sector, as well as the employees of the bank, to become enablers for malfeasance, and this is how we need. I think that would be a discussion to be held by the second panel in terms of enablers and all that. And I think to summarize what Dato' Sri Nur Azlan was talking about, in how, in order to create a mosaic of what is actually current and how law enforcement, together with the banking industry, can address issues of corruption and the 5 major crimes we're talking about. Because if we look at all the 5 major crimes, just like was highlighted just now, the common denominator is corruption, because corruption is the enabler. Whether it's organized crime, whether it's trafficking, whether it's smuggling, or whatever crime, usually the enabler is the tool is the corruption element there. And I think Dato' Sri was right in saying that there's a lot of intelligence, process information which can be turned into actionable intelligence if there is a cooperation between or there is a assistance by the financial sector in giving out certain data, certain geographical information, certain scatter analysis or whatever it is that the law enforcement can use to address issues of corruption.
Just to add on to that, I think the financial industry is a key player in all this, because as what was mentioned, I think the funds flow through the banking system. Yeah. So if you don't put in the right enablers in place to protect that, you can get the right good outcome, you can get a bad outcome.
Exactly.
So I think we've done a tremendous job so far. But of course, the target is always moving.
Yeah.
You know, the so-called criminals are smarter and finding new ways of, it's just like a hacker. They always find new ways of trying to beat your system. And I think the financial industry is not no different.
Yeah, yeah. I think we know that the dark side as well as the right side, they have their own system of surveillance and counter surveillance that they do, and this is something which is a cat and mouse game that we are actually facing. I think finally, before we go and finish this panel, I just wanted to finally ask, is there any other thing that you think, to the three panels here, that you think should be added in this panel discussion that I may have missed?
This is perhaps just my observations of the things when we talk about integrities. Before that, now I know the reasons why I don't join financial institutions. I don't want to be boring. Sorry, though. But to take up on Dato's suggestions, I think for MACCs, we can reveal more to the authorized persons from the requesters. Of course, when we send the letter, it's just a short letter notifying. But for further information, we can have a face-to-face discussions so that we can reveal more, right? Okay. I think we nowadays we segregate ethics and integrities into two: personal and professional, and we are very selective. We call ourselves persons of integrities because actually we are compliant based. We follow orders because it requested upon us to do so. The lists are so much, be it in the private sectors or be it in the public sectors. We used, before this, we cannot not to wear tie. Now we can. Otherwise, the regulations say that you have to wear. So we are compliant based. We are not value based. You yourself, I can guarantee you, I can crack jari, when you send your kid to school, you beat the traffic light because you are so bloody late. You don't comply with the traffic rules because you need to comply with the office rule to be there on time. So you beat the traffic light. So we are so selective. And then just because we don't take corruptions, we call ourselves we are a good person. We always associate integrity with corruptions. For those people who don't take corruptions, but throw away the cigarette butt, merata-rata, or beat the traffic light, they don't see themselves as a bad person. When you get the customers, orang kampung, that become victims of scammers, for them, that 50 ringgit or 100 ringgit is their lifeline. Maybe not for us that we call ourselves T20 below or B40 up or M40 high. It's a lifeline. And yet, when you don't attend to them and try to resolve the thing, I don't think that we are doing right integrity things. So that's my observations in terms of integrities. Another thing that I would like to highlight in terms of how you want to enhance integrities, we always see how the bosses tone or talk. And we heard that people want to see the actions. This is much more important for if you have a reporting channels in your institution. And I believe that every institution have the reporting channel. So the most important thing about reporting channel is to guarantee and to ensure the identity of the whistleblowers or the person who reports will not be revealed. And then to attend to their complaints. I know we don't like people to complain. They are type of people who always like to complain. But then, because you already provide the channels, you have to make him satisfied, be transparent, and justify the reasons why action cannot be taken. Otherwise, they go and membawang. You know, that's one thing. And the another most important thing is that you have to take the DI, domestic inquiry processes, do it fast. If you delay, then people will see that you know there is repercussions to it, the offences that have been committed, misconduct being committed, can't be seen. Malaysians remember things about 2 weeks. After that, they forgot. So you need to read fast. I think that would help in a sense that sending a very strong message to your organizations that you mean business. And another thing is that we should move from the compliance-based values based to the value-based. If you have value-based, you won't require compliance. Yeah. We won't have this. We won't be seeing all the Grab drivers or Grab riders, you know, beating all the bloody traffic lights just to do the deliveries. Our values has gone down, to be honest with you. That's my observation. Thanks.
Well, I think those are very good points. You know, I think one of the things about what you said was following orders and all that. I still remember the My Lai massacre when everyone was just following orders, you know, and I guess to those of you who doesn't know about My Lai massacre, it was a massacre, a military massacre, just because the soldiers were following orders instead of having the what they call the ability to think into what's right and what's wrong, you know. And I think you're right that, you know, we are so compliant adhering that we are not value adhering. You know, I think once you have value adherence, then compliance just come in. You know, and Tuan, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think we've heard that at the end of the day, it starts with our own conscience, our own values, and personal values must be in alignment, because that will drive the behavior, whether in social context or in professional context.
Yeah.
And also I echo, I think, the point that was raised to say that at the end of the day, it starts with all of us in this room, because we are the leaders. It starts from us in terms of not just advocacy, but in terms of our action. But the other thing that I think also equally important, I also believe deep inside, most people, maybe not everybody, but most people want to do the right thing. Nobody wants to be a bad person. I mean, that's my belief, right? Most people want to be a good person, wants to do the right thing. So as leaders, we also need to be able to enable them to do the right thing. We also must be able to shield them to a certain extent from temptations of doing the wrong thing. So when we talk about anti-corruption and all that at workplace, the first thing that we need, I mean, other than all the things that I think all the other speakers have also spoken, we also need to ensure that our employees, our people, I mean, we accord them the right kind of dignity for them to have integrity. So in terms of their compensation, is it reasonable for them to lead a reasonable life, for example, right? Because that will take away, because if it is not addressed, then the temptations will come in. So I think that is the other part, if I were to add on the points that was raised. I mean, and the other thing that, I mean, compliance aside, the other enablers that I think we need to also provide them with would be, sometimes they need guidance for certain things that they need to do. So that's where, for example, like policies, procedures over whistleblowing, over gift, over conflict of interest, how should it be assessed, how should it be dispensed with. I mean, conscience is one thing, but you know, in terms of guidance of how they can act with the right conscience should also be enabled. And I believe these are things that we are also putting in place. Only we shouldn't go to the extent of, while we're providing this guidance, merely adhering to this guidance means everything is okay. I think that's the point by Datuk Sri. We have all this guidance to guide us, but at the end of the day, we need to know the right thing to do, and we do the right thing not because we need to comply with those SOPs, guidance, and policies, because that's the right thing to do. That's all. Thank you.
Dato' Wan, over to you.
Just a couple of points. I think changing culture doesn't happen overnight. And talking about this my lighting that you highlighted, very pertinent. And it's very Asian. We are very obedient culture. We don't question. But really, I think we are seeing some positive changes now. I think the younger generation are starting to. Why I focus on younger generation is that pretty much most of us in this room are maybe towards, I don't want to say we are old, but I think we need to look forward. The future of the country depends on the younger people. They make up a large portion of the population now. So the tone from the top, leadership by example, walk the talk. I mean, you can lecture people about what to do, but you must. The best way to see behavior change is when you do it. Talking alone is not enough. Macam kita dengan anak-anak kita lah. You tell your children don't do this, tapi tengok bapak pun buat juga. So I think that narrative has to, we have to pivot towards a different kind of, values. Kita anggap the younger generation macam anak-anak kita juga lah. They need to see positive action from the seniors as a hope for them to move forward. So I think that's I want to emphasize that we must behave with integrity, with credibility, and then inshallah I think things will kind of and then combine that with good Islamic values, because Islamic values propound this kind of the way we need to behave in this world. So it starts from there. Maybe we should start. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the common themes that comes out here is the idea of the ability to question, especially with regards to when you're talking about whistleblowing, the channel that you use, whether it could be a technology-assisted channel or there are certain protocol channels that you can use and allow that to thrive, then the internal check and balances will actually come in and minimize risk. In finality, I just want to say a short story. I am a criminologist by qualification. So if I look at you, I know whether you're a criminal or not. Okay, but no, I'm joking. Okay, we talk about processes, we talk about laws, we talk about regulation. As a criminologist, I usually say this to my students in their first class. I said Moses went up the mountain and got 10 commandments. It was 10 commandments, right? But you didn't know that he forgot to bring down the 11th commandment. So the 10 commandments that he brought down was, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not fornicate, thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that. You know what was the 11th commandment that he forgot to bring down? Thou shalt not get caught. Now, if he had brought that down, all the other 10 commandments wouldn't have mattered. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is, everything is about our inner conscience. You can have so many rules put in place, but if our conscience doesn't play according to what is right or wrong, you can have thousands of rules and regulations, and it will count for nothing. Okay, and finally, I would like to thank you, our distinguished panel here, for quite a valuable insight that they have given, and I do apologize if I have asked the wrong questions or in the wrong sequence or anything. But I think we all have actually benefited from this session here. I think again, on behalf of the organizers, I would like to thank the panel for making the time to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, our moderator and panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Next, I would like to welcome on the stage Yang Berusaha Encik Ahmad Syariman Muhammad Sharif, Secretary of AIBIM and CEO CIMB Islamic, to hand over mementos to our panelists and moderator. Please welcome. Gentlemen, please face the photographer for official group photo. Thank you, Yang Berusaha Encik Syariman. And once again, congratulations and thank you to our moderator and panelists for an insightful discussion just now.